Alright guys, it's jerninhgam here. Confusing quarantine rules changed again with days. Portugal for brink, as you can see here. This is Portugal. There may be a video there where we can actually press play or whatever.
Portugal's Algarve go to and from the UK, with today all the pressure on departures. For those going back home to Scotland, there's still time to beat the quarantine deadline in the early hours of tomorrow. But anyone in line for the Cardiff flight this morning, there hadn't been enough warning, and many were pretty angry about that.
Now we have to quarantine for 14 days. And if we'd realised this, we probably wouldn't have come out if they were going to reintroduce it as quickly within 2 weeks of lifting it. I think it's grossly unfair.
How inconvenient is it going to be for you now?
Very, because we waited and waited to make sure that we
see a lot of confused people and annoyed people. Then what's going on? They would have thought it got more, you know.
For 2 weeks anyway.
The longest queues were for flights to England, where there's no quarantine requirement yet, but no one's sure for how long. Most of these people were booked to fly back today anyway, but some have spent a lot of money changing their flights to beat quarantine, only to find if they're going to England, they didn't need to. It all emphasises just how much this is costing tourists, the local economy here in Portugal, and of course the UK travel industry.
Some friends of ours who met us, they had to book flights to come out for the possibility of changing, and then obviously it didn't happen, so...
But they spent money and they didn't need to.
They spent about £800 on an early flight and didn't need to, yeah.
Undeterred by new quarantine rules or the threat of more to follow, many were still arriving in Faro this afternoon, either believing a holiday in the sun is worth the risk or happy enough to self-isolate if necessary.
We didn't know anything right up until yesterday evening, did we?
Did you think about cancelling?
We wouldn't have cancelled, no, we spent too much money to cancel it, just for the quarantine.
We would have got us money back if we'd have cancelled, so...
That is what taking a holiday has become right now, a series of last-minute decisions, a gamble that borders once opened will stay open, and always the risk of a sudden, very expensive dash back home. James Mates, News at 10, in the Algarve.
Well, if you want to watch that news, guys, it's on ITV News, girls. And we're going to move on from that, and we're going to talk about it. The Transport Security has holded the news already confused quarantine advice of spreading. UK national may change again coming days. Granted, got itchy nose. Nose is so itchy. Don't know why my nose keeps itching. High marked models enough to be understood, and it talks about travellers. Enough to be travelled called Wales and Scotland, quarantine on rules, England, Northern Ireland. So I'm going to press play in this video and see what happens in this one.
But holidaymakers are becoming increasingly frustrated with their politicians, aren't they?
That's absolutely right. A plane in from Faro just over an hour ago, there were people on it who live in Wales, there are people who live in England. The Welsh, those who habitat in Wales will have to stay in self-isolation for the next 2 weeks. Those who've gone back to England can carry on as normal. It does seem strange, and there is, for the perspective of some people, a little whiff of suspicion that there might be some politics at play, but that is denied by the politicians.
This isn't about making choices to be deliberately different or to do things because we can. It's because there's a real risk in the return spread of coronavirus. And the first wave that did so much damage and harm was largely driven by importation of coronavirus into the UK from mainland European travel.
But it is, I'm afraid, a bit confusing, though I suspect people will know which country they live in and be able to follow local rules. I'm in charge of what happens in England from the point of view of quarantining. In fact, we've not made any changes at all this week, looking at the data.
Devolution here happened 20 odd years ago. It is just the system that we have. Health, which is the issue of this pandemic, is decided here in Wales by the Welsh Government. The English have the right to do things differently there. Of course, it worries people who have to travel and are making decisions, but that is very much down to the politicians as to what they do here and how they behave.
Rupert, thank you.
Another short video there. I'm going to be moving on from that video. It was afraid to confuse the thoughts of suspecting people who had known the countries are living in to be able to follow the rules. Boris Johnson's over-minded, protected but attended different nationals protest problems, and during the Prime Minister, as it talks about that as well. We're going to show another video as well.
Well, first of all, I understand the difficulties that the airline industry has been going through. I know how tough it is, particularly for people who are facing the potential loss of their jobs in the aviation sector. We're going to do everything. We continue to do everything we can to help. To put our arms around every part of British business, large and small. As you know, we've already put 40 billion into the furlough scheme, 160 billion altogether supporting business in our country. We will do more to support aviation. The particular problem is that if everyone thinks you can have some test at the airport that will answer whether you've got it or not. Unfortunately, it only works in 7% of the cases. So 93% of the time, you could have a real false sense of security, false sense of confidence when you arrive and take a test. And that's why the quarantine system that we have has got to be an important part of our repertoire, of our toolbox in fighting COVID. We've got to a situation now, we've got the disease right down, we've got death down, we've got hospital admissions down. We're starting to see, we're getting schools back now. It's fantastic to see kids getting back into school in huge numbers, and I pay tribute to teachers, to parents, to pupils for what they're doing. It's happening all over the country. What we don't want to see now is infection, reinfection coming in from abroad, and quarantine's a vital part of that.
Wow, that was very interesting what you said about that. Moving on for that. Asking what quarantine imposes return, coming Mr. Sharp says, I can't guidance the cases has been kept check. These will try to announce Thursday. But changes sometimes act and sharply, as they talk about, acting out on the sharp with different UK nations of changing what England happened. So we're going to see what this guy says here as he's talking.
But it is, I'm afraid, a bit confusing. I suspect people will know which country they live in and be able to follow local rules. I'm in charge of what happens in England from the point of view of quarantining. In fact, we've not made any changes at all this week, looking at the data. But different parts of the United Kingdom do have their own rules and regulations, and therefore come to their own decisions, just as they have through, for example, the lockdown, where you'd often find different rules about the number of families who could mix and the rest of it.
That was a short video. It wasn't very long, considering. Joint the 14 days arrival of Downing Street, Portugal, and six unspoken tens declared imposing GPD accessing minister. I'm going to talk about more about this, wherever this is going to be.
Not very happy. Can't complain because we took the chance to go on holiday, so we're not going to be one of these people to kind of moan about everything because we had a nice time. But ultimately, it just leaves a lot of questions to be answered. Really, we're not going to get the answers, are we?
When you book today, I think that you could take that risk, don't you? That things are changing daily. So yeah, we just need to work out around doing work now and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think. Hopefully they'll be understanding, but I'll find out Monday morning.
Another short video. Mr. Sharp quarantines powers to administrate added Westminster declare. Suggestions cases have been different parts of the United Kingdom have resigned. Decisions on unknown down. We often different families mixed could be mixed. Yep. The suggestions of coronavirus airports needed to have understood code to be needed and understood the testing points have seen 93% you have seen fallen. What is the quarantine importance, as they say to me? Oh, well. Decisions have left requirement of Portugal due to the spikes of 19 cases, holidays making the government a rival. So it talks about all that as well. So that's all it really says about everything that we've really talked about in this video. And it gives you some kind of idea of what that sort of thing is, percentages of where the dates were and how the contract reaches the test and trace of cases of coronavirus. Let's have a look here. Mine's got a bit funny. The figures of showing closely contacted people tested positive COVID-19 being less indicated 6.723 new people tested positive in England. The weekly, 26th of August, weekly, and it goes on about Thursday, daily, June the 4th, 1.73 positive, routes 24 hours. Meanwhile, positive in 24 hours, meanwhile, significantly testing 100 miles. 100 miles from there as well, it talks about, and 4 p.m. programs. So that's all it's done. ITV, ITV2, ITVB, ITV3, ITV4, ITV. So yeah, anyway, guys and girls, hope you've all enjoyed that video, what you've just done. Give it a like and give it a comment and share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.